I want to show you a number, not a financial concept, not a theory, a specific dollar amount that represents something very real and very permanent. Imagine two people, both are 22 years old, both will work until they're 65, both will invest in the same index fund, earning the same average annual return of 7%. Person A starts investing at 22. They put in $300 a month for the first 10 years, from age 22 to age 32. Then they stop. They never invest another dollar. They just let what they put in sit there and compound for the next 33 years until retirement. Total amount invested, $36,000. Person B waits. They spend their 20s figuring things out, paying off stuff, living life. At 32, they start investing $300 a month. They invest that same $300 every single month for the next 33 years, all the way to retirement. Total amount invested, $118,800. Now here's the question, at 65, who has more money? Person A invested $36,000 and stopped at 32. Person B invested $118,800 and never stopped. You might think person B, they invested 3 times as much money for 33 years straight. Surely they come out ahead. They don't. At 65, person A, who stopped investing at 32 and never touched it again, has approximately $678,000. Person B, who invested 3 times as much money every month for 33 years, has approximately $631,000. Person A wins by $47,000, having invested $82,800 less. That number, the gap between these two outcomes, is what waiting costs. It's not a penalty you pay all at once. It's a cost that compounds silently, invisibly, every single year you're not in the market. And by the time most people realize it, the years where compounding is most powerful, the 20s and early 30s, are already gone. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, compounding, and the math that most people don't run until it's too late to change the outcome. This video is about what waiting to invest actually costs, not in abstract percentages, but in real dollars, real timelines, and the real thing that's silently disappearing every month you're not in the market. Subscribe and let's get into it. Let's start with the mechanism, because I think understanding it is what makes the numbers make sense instead of just seeming like magic. Compound interest means your returns generate returns. When you earn 7% on $1,000, you have $1,070 at the end of the year. Next year, the 7% applies to $1,070, not just the original $1,000. So your return is $74.90, not $70. Small difference in year 2, enormous difference over decades. Here's a way to think about it concretely. In the first year your money is invested, the compounding does almost nothing noticeable. In year 10, it's doing something. In year 20, it's doing more than your contributions. In year 30, it's doing several times what your contributions are doing. The longer money is invested, the more the compounding does the work, and the less your own contributions matter relative to the compounding. This is why the first years of investing are so disproportionately valuable, not because you're contributing more in your 20s than you would in your 30s, but because money invested at 22 has 43 years of compounding. Money invested at 32 has 33 years. That 10-year difference at the beginning is not equivalent to 10 years in the middle or at the end. In compounding math, the early years are worth dramatically more. The conventional wisdom about this, start early, time in the market beats timing the market, is right, but it's stated so blandly that most people hear it and file it under, I'll get around to it. What doesn't get said clearly enough is what the cost of not getting around to it actually is in specific dollar amounts. Let's run several scenarios to make this concrete. Scenario 1, you start at 22 versus starting at 27, just 5 years. You invest $500 a month starting at 22. By 65, at 7% annual return, you have approximately $2,200,000. You invest $500 a month starting at 27. Same rate, same contribution. By 65, you have approximately $1,540,000. The cost of those 5 years at the beginning, approximately $660,000. From 5 years of waiting. Scenario 2, you start at 22 versus starting at 32, 10 years. Same $500 a month, same 7%. Start at 22, approximately 2,200,000. Start at 32, approximately 1,090,000. The cost of 10 years at the beginning, approximately $1,110,000, more than $1 million from not starting in your 20s. Let's add a third comparison because I think it makes the pattern impossible to misread as a fluke of the specific numbers chosen. You invest $500 a month starting at 22 versus starting at 42, 20 years of difference. Start at 22, approximately 2,200,000 by 65. Start at 42, approximately 525,000 by 65. The cost of 20 years of waiting, approximately $1,675,000. And notice something important about this comparison. The person who started at 42 still invested for 23 years. 23 years is not a short time. Most people would describe that as a long, disciplined investing career, and it still produces less than a third of what starting at 22 produces, because those missing 20 years happen to be the 20 years where compounding had the most runway ahead of it to work with. This is the part of compound growth that defies intuition. We tend to think of financial outcomes as roughly proportional to effort and time invested. Twice the years should produce roughly twice the result. But compounding isn't linear, it's exponential, which means the relationship between time invested and outcome produced gets dramatically more favorable the earlier you start, not because the early dollars are special, but because they have more multiplication cycles ahead of them. Now here's what I find most striking about these numbers. The cost is not the money you didn't invest. You could theoretically make up the contributions, invest more per month later to catch up. What you cannot make up is the compounding time. The 33 years of compounding starting at 32 will never equal the 43 years of compounding starting at 22. The time cannot be retroactively purchased. It's the one resource in this equation that's truly finite and non-renewable. Let's talk about the reasons people wait, because they're real and I don't want to dismiss them. The most common one, debt. Student loans, credit card balances, car payments. The logic is, I'll pay off debt first, then invest. This logic has some merit when the debt carries high interest rates. If you have credit card debt at 20% interest, paying that off first is mathematically correct. But for lower interest debt, student loans at 5 or 6%, car loans at similar rates, the math is actually closer than people think. And in many cases, investing even a small amount while paying down lower interest debt produces better long-term outcomes than waiting. The second common reason, not enough money. I'll invest when I have real money to invest. This one is almost entirely a framing problem. The example at the beginning of this video featured $300 a month. That's $10 a day, less than a daily Starbucks order. For some people, even that isn't accessible. But for many people who believe they can't afford to invest, the actual barrier isn't money. It's the belief that small amounts don't matter. They matter enormously because of what they compound into. Many brokerage accounts now allow investment with literally $1. The minimum is not the barrier. The belief that the minimum investment won't make a real difference is the barrier. And as the scenarios above show, that belief is wrong in a very expensive way. The third common reason, I don't know enough yet. I need to learn more before I start. I'll research until I understand it fully. This is a disguised form of analysis paralysis, and it has a specific cost. Every month of research is a month of compounding you don't get back. The research doesn't produce returns, the invested money does. The irony of this one is that the most effective investment strategy for most people, broad market index funds, consistent contributions, don't touch it, requires almost no ongoing expertise to implement. The learning curve is steep when you're trying to pick individual stocks and time the market. For consistent index investing, there's almost nothing to learn. You start, you automate, you ignore it. Let's talk about what actually changes when someone starts, not eventually, when they actually begin. The first thing that changes is psychological. There's a shift that happens the first time you see your account balance grow from something other than your own deposits. The market goes up a bit, your balance ticks up, and it ticked up because you owned something, not because you worked for it. For many people, this is the first direct sensory experience of compounding, and it's remarkably motivating in a way that reading about compounding is not. The second thing that changes is your relationship to market downturns. When you're not in the market, a downturn is abstract. Markets went down, people lost money, scary. When you're in the market during a downturn, your account goes down, which is uncomfortable, but it also comes with a clarifying realization. The recovery has historically always come, and every dollar you have invested at the lower price will benefit more from the recovery than if you'd invested at the peak. Downturns from inside a long-term position start to look different than they do from the outside. The third thing that changes is your savings behavior overall. Research consistently shows that people who invest tend to save more than people who don't, controlling for income. The mechanism appears to be that watching money compound, actually seeing it work, changes the perceived opportunity cost of spending. Every discretionary purchase starts to carry a mental comparison, this versus what it would become in 20 years at 7%. This isn't paralyzing, it just recalibrates what feels worth it. Let me walk you through how this played out for someone specific. Let's call him Marcus. Marcus is 28. He's been meaning to start investing since he was 23. Every year he thinks about it. Every year there's a reason to wait. The student loans, the apartment move, the period when his job was uncertain, the time he wanted to understand it better first. One evening he did the math on what waiting had cost him, using a simple compound interest calculator. If he'd started at 23 with $200 a month and increased it to $300 at 25, he would currently have, at 28, approximately $24,000, growing at 7% annually. He didn't have that. He had essentially nothing invested. The 5 years of waiting had cost him, in compounded future terms he calculated all the way to 65, approximately $240,000. He opened an account that week, started with $250 a month, automated to go in on the same day as his paycheck. He didn't wait until he fully understood everything. He started with a total market index fund because it required the fewest decisions and the least ongoing attention. 3 months later, his account had gone up and down with the market, ending up about what he'd put in. He told me the interesting thing was that the volatility didn't bother him the way he'd expected. It felt like watching a plant. Some weeks it looked better, some weeks worse, but the direction over time was clear enough that checking on it wasn't stressful. It was just something he owned, doing what it was designed to do. Let me give you a second example because I think it's useful to see how this plays out for someone who waited even longer. Let's call her Diane. Diane is 45. She had spent her 20s and 30s in a similar pattern to Marcus, meaning to start, never quite starting, watching the years go by with a vague sense that she'd get to it. At 45, she finally sat down and ran the numbers, partly out of a growing anxiety about retirement that she could no longer ignore. The math was sobering. Starting at 45 with $500 a month at 7% by 65, 20 years of contributions, she'd have approximately $260,000, a meaningful sum. But nowhere near what the same monthly contribution would have produced starting at 25, which would have been over $1,200,000 by the same age 65. Diane's reaction wasn't despair, it was urgency. She couldn't get the missing 20 years back, but she could control what happened from 45 forward. She increased her monthly contribution to $800, recognizing that since she had fewer years of compounding ahead, she needed to compensate with higher contributions to reach a comparable outcome. At $800 a month for 20 years at 7%, her projected total moved to approximately $416,000, still less than what an earlier start would have produced at a lower contribution, but substantially better than continuing to wait and enough to meaningfully change her retirement picture. Diane's situation illustrates something important. Starting late doesn't mean the math no longer works. It means the math requires either more money, more time, or both to produce a comparable result. The earlier scenarios in this video aren't meant to suggest that someone starting at 40 or 50 has no path forward. They're meant to show clearly what the most common excuses, waiting for the right moment, waiting to understand more, waiting until there's enough to invest, actually cost, so that the decision to keep waiting is made with full information rather than vague good intentions. Practically, if you're listening to this and you haven't started yet, the path is genuinely simple. First, open an account. A brokerage account, a Roth IRA, whatever your employer's sponsored plan is. This takes about 15 minutes online. Second, choose a broad market index fund. total US market, total world market, S&P 500 index. These require no stock picking expertise, have extremely low fees, and have historically delivered strong long-term returns. Third, set up an automatic contribution, whatever amount you can start with, even $50. Set it to go in automatically every month so it doesn't require a decision each time. Fourth, ignore it for as long as possible. Don't check daily. Don't try to time anything. Let the compounding run. That's it. That's the whole system. It requires one afternoon to set up and then almost no ongoing attention. The complexity of investing is mostly irrelevant to the strategy that produces the best outcomes for most people. Here's what I want to leave you with. Every month you're not in the market is a month of compounding you will never get back. Not delayed, gone. The time at the beginning of your investing life is worth more per year than any time later because every year has more years of compounding ahead of it. A month at 22 is worth more than a year at 50 in compounding terms. The money you need to start is smaller than you think. The knowledge you need is smaller than you think. The time it takes to set up is shorter than you think. The only thing that's not recoverable is the time you spend thinking about it instead of doing it. Drop a comment. How old were you when you invested for the first time? And if you haven't started yet, what's the actual thing that's been in the way? Thanks for watching.